following announcement has been paid for by the WZWA Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Insider's Edge podcast here on the WZWA Network. I'm your host with the most on the West Coast, California Inferior. What a joy, honor, and privilege to be with you all once again. And speaking once again of a joy, honor, and privilege I have right now, right here with me. I'm a very, very lucky man right here, right now. I get to speak to the one and only former world's women heavyweight champion. She is the modern day Mauler. She is Malia Hosaka. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I
don't know that it's a pleasure. I know many people it's not so much of a pleasure.
Well, I will disagree with them. This is definitely a pleasure and honor for me to be speaking with you, having been such a big fan of yours for some years now. First question, as per usual on the show, is when you're a young lady, before you were in the business, how did you become a fan of professional wrestling?
I wasn't a fan of professional wrestling. My dad was the fan.
Okay.
And I watched a match between Bugsy McGraw and the Missing Link. And I was like, really, Dad, anybody could do this. This is so stupid. And my dad's like, well, I bet you couldn't. And that set me on the path to prove my dad wrong.
That's tremendous. We have had that before on the show as well. People weren't actually a fan and they got into it and ended up becoming quite good at it. So finding your way into the business at some point, how do you, at that point in time, find your way into finding a place to get trained?
Well, I mean, we're talking about the mid 80s, so it was a lot harder to get into the business than what it is now. So, and especially for the girls, because the girls couldn't just go to any school. Like, guys didn't train the girls. So you had to find a school where girls could go to. So I started going to shows with my dad, and I met Hacksaw Higgins, who was a local well, I shouldn't say local. He was working for the NWA at the time, Florida Championship Wrestling, and started talking with him. He put me in contact with Misty Blue, and I went up to her school where I was trained by Killer Kowalski.
Excellent. Well, if you're going to get trained by anyone, that is somebody you should certainly.
It was amazing. It was truly amazing. Yeah,
I can imagine, and the amount of talent that has come out of Kowalski School, especially back in those days. The names speak for themselves. Okay, so you do training. It's an amazing experience. You get into the business now. I'm sorry that I skimmed through certain things, but I'm excited to get to certain questions.
Okay.
The LPWA in the early 90s, I know you worked a bit there. I just want for you to have the chance to let our viewers know the lay of the land back then. From your perspective, what was the landscape like with ladies wrestling at that point in time?
Ladies wrestling at that time was still very territorial. Like, we kind of stayed in our own areas until LPWA brought a bunch of us together. And then at LPWA, it was kind of like a bunch of big fish from small ponds coming into a big pond, trying to figure out who the bigger fish was. For instance, like Luna Vachon, she was well known. She traveled, nationally and things like that. But Florida was really her area. So it was like myself, Luna Vachon, Penelope Paradise. And then you go up to Georgia, you had Bambi and Peggy Lee. South Carolina was Judy Martin and Leilani Kai. Nashville's Debbie Combs and Candy Divine. So we all kind of stayed in our areas, and you didn't go outside of that area. And if you did, you made sure you didn't undercut the other girls. Like, you were going in to work with one of them because, Bambi and Peggy ran the circuit so often against each other that they needed to bring in some new talent to kind of freshen up the matches a little bit here and there. But yeah, we kind of stayed to ourselves and respected one another like that. The flip side of it is too, if you weren't cut out, the girls were a very closed circuit. So if you weren't cut out in the business and you weren't cut out to be in the ring and represent the women, they'd run you out. They gave no mercy. Like, so they would just make your life miserable to where you just quit, because if you didn't have the heart, you weren't going to stay with it.
I see. That's interesting. So looking back, what do you think it was that, or the qualities that you had that allowed you to be, I guess, accepted into the
I was
business?
quiet. I was shy. And so I really didn't say a whole lot in the locker rooms. I didn't, I just sat back and I listened, and I got kind of taken under Leilani's wing at LPWA. Her and Judy kind of took myself and Bambi under their wing, and Bambi and I were teamed together, so that helped. But it was just really, I had the heart to stay with it, and I wanted to learn. I was a fan of, once I got in, I was a fan of the art and what it took to be a wrestler, and to tell the story, and I wanted to be good at that. So I wasn't just fluff. And we were also fighting the image of the Glow girls back then, because Glow has their cult following, but back then it kind of created a stereotype that girls couldn't wrestle. We were just the hee-haw and a joke. And so we were fighting that image as well, that, if you're big, and like Leilani and Judy, and not small and petite, then you could wrestle. But if you were small and petite, then you couldn't wrestle. You were, more the joke and the skit type wrestler. And so it was a transition stage for women's wrestling, I really think, going from the old school into a more modern school. But we still had respect for the old school. We still learned it. We still, you had to have talent in order to travel. You had to have talent in order to get booked. You had to be able to wrestle. You couldn't just get booked based off of your looks and who you knew.
Absolutely. And that makes me really realize just how long women have been fighting for a bigger position in pro wrestling, because there's obviously, you have the WWE narrative, which is the strongest one because it reaches the most eyeballs, unfortunately. Yeah. But they always seem to forget the fact that, this women's revolution didn't begin just like 5-6 years ago. Everyone was working their butts off way back then, and it took even longer to get.
What really pisses me off about this whole women's revolution is the fact that WWE doesn't even recognize that Leilani and Judy were the first original women's tag team champions. It's like they didn't ever exist. And they were really the revolution of women's wrestling, because they came in and they were wrestling the Jumping Bomb Angels, doing things that nobody had seen before, and including the guys in the locker room. And everybody was just amazed by this stuff. And so they were really transitioning women's wrestling into more of a mainstream, hey, we can be taken seriously, and we deserve a place on this card, and we deserve to be looked at in a different light than just the eye candy of the show. So that was really, to me, the women's revolution started way back then with them, to get women on the map, to be seen as not a special attraction, but as a part of the show.
Absolutely. Glad that we could cover that a little bit here on the show, because this is like a big part of my show, is making sure that the true narrative gets out there from people that were actually there. 1991, I'm always super excited when I find out somebody worked for Herb Abrams.
Yes.
You worked with Luna Vachon there, April 6, 91. And then there was a Fury Hour taping the next day. You defeated Penelope Paradise, and you worked with Luna again. This is a loaded question, but firstly, how was Luna to work with? And do you have any stories for working for Herb and what the company was like?
Well, so again, I was very green then. So I kind of took my bookings and I did my job and kept my mouth shut and did whatever was asked for me. So I didn't really ever and I've kind of done that my whole career. I've never really made waves in as far as like when a promoter tells me they want something. I think there might have been 2 or 3 times that I refused to do it over the course of my career. But working with Luna was amazing. She was one of the first girls I ever worked with at Florida Championship Wrestling when I first started, long before Herb Abrams. Luna kind of became my wrestling mom in the industry. She was there for me. She booked me in Florida. She was somebody I could go to and talk to. But she could be stiff. She could be, but it was never unsafe. It was, if she laid it in, is because she got into the lunatic so much that I think she would just get stiff in the ring without realizing she was being stiff. But outside the ring, she was the sweetest person. I mean, I loved her. I miss her every day.
Yeah, it seems to be the general consensus about Luna. Sweetest person, but then a flip can switch when she's in the ring or whatever's
Right.
going on.
But anyway,
You
I
know.
mean, Luna was, I don't know if she was ever diagnosed bipolar, but Luna
Hmm.
had mental issues. I'll know that especially from the dark side of the ring that they did. And she was paranoid. Like if you were talking and just by chance when she came in the room, the conversation ended, she would swear you were talking about her. And you might not have been. You could have been talking about your dog or whatever. Sadly, that was something that haunted her is in her self-esteem, is that she just that paranoia. But overall, there wasn't a person in this business really that I've met with a bigger heart. She would have done anything for anybody, but she did have that switch, and if it flipped, she was a full-on lunatic.
Thank you for sharing that. I love to hear stories about legends like Luna. Moving forward again, Eastern Championship Wrestling. I just found this in my research, thought it was interesting. NWA Bloodfest on October 1st, 93, defeating Molly McShane. Then you substitute for Madusa at November to Remember on November 13th, 93, against Sherry Martel. So I just want to know, this is kind of ECW before it's the extreme ECW.
Yeah.
But at the time, it's Philadelphia.
Extreme, but not extreme. It wasn't. I mean, the fans were still bringing things because it was the old, the Philly, the crowd, and everything like that. And like even when I wrestled Molly, they were brutal. They're like, "You're no jumping bomb angels, or who do you think you are?" and things like that with the stuff that we were doing. So they were they were a brutal crowd to work for. They very bloodthirsty. Working with Sherry was great. Yes, I substituted for Madusa because apparently her and Sherry didn't get along, and Madusa didn't want to get in the ring with her. I was supposed to work in Maryland that night, and they swapped it out. Madusa worked my show in Maryland, and they brought me up to Philly.
All right, well, that's cool. I kind of had a feeling that the Philly fans would be, even back then, still hard to please.
They were brutal.
Moving into 1994, again, in my research, this appears to be the time where you had your first tour of Japan with FMW. I might be wrong, though. The internet can be wrong at times. Please tell me of that experience, what you learned most from your time there.
I think it was more like 93.
Okay.
It may have been 94, but it was shortly after LPWA folded. So because we were going over still on the high from LPWA, hoping that something more was going to come about from it. But I went over, it was myself and Bambi and Leilani Kai were the American girls that went over. And at the time I was a heel because the Americans were heels going over there. And they decided that they liked my look and they turned me babyface. It's my understanding that I was supposed to team with Megumi Kudo, but politics came into effect and that just never transpired. But I got to work with some tremendous people. Combat Toyota, she was, I think, the big one over there at the time that I really worked with. But I learned that a 3 foot nothing girl could kick you in the face and go, "So sorry," But it was a tremendous working experience because you didn't lay down and sell. Like you had to like keep moving. And they were very strict on the kayfabe. So like, even though they left me on the American bus where I could travel and associate and talk because I didn't speak Japanese, we'd pull in and I had to stay hidden and they get everybody off the bus. Then once everybody was inside, they'd come out and they'd shuffle me into the babyface room so that the fans didn't see me. And then afterwards, it was just the reverse. I get shuffled out to the bus and I had to hide until all the others got on, and then we drove off, and then I was allowed to come out of hiding. So they were very strict about that, and they included their magazines even in on all of their storylines, so they would know exactly where to be to take the pictures to help evolve these stories and keep them going.
Right. Awesome stuff. It's always interesting stories from when anyone goes to Japan and learns about the way that they do things there. Again, I wanted to move forward because this, in my research, I found this to be quite interesting. Looking forward to the answer. 9th of May, 1996 for Southern States Wrestling in Johnson City, Tennessee. You defeat Debbie Combs to become the NWA World Women's Champion for a day before dropping it back the following day in Fall Branch, Tennessee. Could you tell me what this was all about? Why the hot potato with the championship here? And How was it?
At the time, I believe NWA was trying to recognize Madusa as the champion. I don't think Debbie nor I ever really thought they would recognize that as me holding the belt, even though Debbie was the actual NWA champion at the time. I think they were really trying. I believe it was Madusa. It could have been Bambi, but I believe it was Madusa they were trying to bill as being their champion. And Debbie and I were just running the circuit. That was so after LPWA closed, Debbie kind of took me under her wing and really seasoned me out, taking me with her everywhere and traveling. And so I was in the ring with her, goodness, at least 3 weekends a year, 3 times a week, you know. And so, you know, when you run that territory, like I said, with even Peggy and Bambi did, you have to do things to kind of keep the crowd coming back. And those towns were close together. So the idea was drop the belt to me on the first night, and then she could take it back the second night, but it would keep a storyline going, and versus just her beating me both nights.
Okay, that makes sense. So I'm sure, you know, this is just, you know, this is business. This is what you got to do to draw the next house. It's not like you have this moment where you hold this championship and you're like, is this a massive moment for you?
Right. So don't get me wrong. Like the belts mean something. The belts at every company should mean something, which is one reason I'm against. You'll never see me with a picture of like every company's belt together, because I don't want to diminish like one company's belt to another. Like I've got 10 belts. Look at me. No, every company's belt should be special. We didn't think NWA would ever recognize that, but it's one of those people like, look, I won the belt. You didn't win the belt. Okay. It was given to you during a storyline. You didn't actually win this belt. Like you didn't go in there and fight to the death to get this belt. So I love when people are like, oh, did you see so-and-so won the belt? Yeah, they didn't win the belt. It was given to them. It didn't get them any more money. The belt essentially is a prop. Yes. You need a champion to justify your belt and make your belt mean something, but your belt needs to mean something in order to put it on a champion. And it's the two components of the wrestling ring working together and the wrestling business working together. It's not like, you know, going out and boxing and you knock somebody out and all of a sudden you've got the world title. Okay. This is entertainment. The bottom line of it is sports entertainment. So you've got to do what's best to draw business.
Absolutely. It's a very refreshing take on the championship situation in professional wrestling. I like hearing that. Very good. Okay, I want to start getting to some WCW talk here, because this was when I first discovered you and became a fan of you, was watching WCW. How did the company, or did you get into contact with one another? I have a feeling maybe Sonny Ono might have something to do with it, but that's just a guess.
Actually not. It was really weird. I was working a show. I was doing a kind of a little loop up through Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, and coming down, and I was scheduled to work a show for Ben Masters in Georgia, and I was working Candy Divine, and Terry Taylor happened to be there that night. And Tracy Smothers told Terry that he really needed to watch my match. And Terry watched my match, and afterwards he asked me if I would consider working for WCW. And I'm like, let me think about that one for like 2 seconds. Yeah. And he's like, well, you'd have to work Madusa. I'm like, kind of figured that. But he took my name, and yeah, that's really how I got in there. And then I was paired with Sonny Ono because Madusa needed to lose. And I guess that was the way to justify her losing, was the fact that Sonny walks me out. He holds her feet. She can't kick out. And then, because like literally the very next week, he's managing Akira Hokuto over me. So like, he's out there with me, helping me beat Madusa. And the next week he's out there with Akira Hokuto beating me. So yeah, I like Sonny. I had a good experience with him and stuff like that, but I say this a lot, and he's not the only one. There's a lot of people I've come across from my past that remember my importance in the company a lot different than what I do.
Right.
And Sonny was an integral part of the women's division, and I just don't remember it being that way. I was kind of the girl they brought in because I had no problem putting anybody over that they wanted to put over.
Right, interesting. Yeah, because I find the WCW women's division from like that 96 to 97 period very interesting, because it was there and then it was kind of all of a sudden just gone. And I will get to that soon. And also it's interesting when I look at your time in WCW, because yes, like you were with Sonny 1 minute, then he was with someone else. Then it appeared like you might have been a baby face. Every single time you went out there, it seemed like you had a different theme song.
Right. They were just all over. Like I said, I was just kind of the extra, as they would call it today, or enhancement talent, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it the job girl. I was just, like I said, I guess that's one reason why you could say I never made it big, is because I don't rock the boat. I go in and I do my job. I'm paid to do a job and I do that job. They say squeaky wheel gets the grease, but I just never squeaked. So that's what you want. That's what you get. I go out there and do the best of my ability. As far as the women's division at that time, now, my understanding of it is that Madusa had the power, and Madusa only wanted to work with the Japanese girls. And they kept bringing me back because here's a local Japanese girl that Madusa could work against, and they don't have to have the expense of bringing in the Japanese girl. Madusa tells it differently. She says that she didn't have the power. She wishes she did have the power. So again, which story's right, which story's wrong, I don't know. I just know what I was told back then. And what I was told is that she only wanted the Japanese girls in there, which is why, other than myself, for that whole time, pretty much, it was only Japanese girls in there.
Right, interesting. I love learning about this, because this is like one of these little mysteries of WCW that I wanted to dig into here. November 10th, 96, you make your WCW worldwide debut. They wrote your name as Malia Hosaka.
Yeah. There's still quite a few ways there.
And you know what? I was having a hard time too, because the commentators kept on pronouncing your first name differently each time. And I was just like, can someone please get it right so I know exactly how? So I had to look at some other footage from different companies to get it right. But you work with Meiko Satomura, who is the current NXT UK Women's Champion. When I looked at this and I did a deep dive on who she was, I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, she must have been like a teenager or something at this point.
Right, yeah.
Because I believe she's still only 40 years old or something like that at this stage.
Right.
It only lasted 1 minute and 14 seconds. For me, how does that happen? It seems like this was pretty prevalent. A lot of the matches in my research, it seemed like they didn't even give you girls longer than 5 minutes. Was that frustrating?
Girls are never given very long. They're not viewed as being necessary, but I don't think they think the women can carry it, to be honest. One, if you have girls go out there and really work hard and do a great job, well, now your guys got to work that much harder. And how many of the top talent really want to work that much harder? And it goes back to, like, I laugh, but I don't know if you're familiar with Beautiful Bobby and Little Kato, the midgets. Yep. So they were two of the best midget wrestlers out on the indie circuit. And I was working for Harley Race, and they were working for Harley Race. Well, we would argue over who had to follow each other, because we knew you had to step it up if you followed the other one. And I think that's a large part of with the girls too, is that why do we go out there and give the girls a huge storyline and an opportunity to do like a 12 to 15 minute match? And if they go out there and blow the house down, well, now we've got to work harder to keep them back with us. Because there are certainly girls that are capable of going out there and doing that. Even back then, there were women capable of going out there and doing that. But yeah, women were just at that time not seen as being a necessary part of the show or something that the fans wanted to see.
Right, yeah, because it's interesting to me, because they start this women's division. They start the tournament. 8 ladies enter a tournament spanning 56 days from November 4th, 96 to Starrcade on December 29th. You enter the tournament on Nitro, defeated by Zero. Did management or anyone up above mention anything about plans going forward? This is going to be a division that will be going be a part of the company for the long haul. Nothing like that.
No, if they had anything like that, it was never mentioned to me. again, that's where I say, you know, I don't feel like I was in an integral part of that women's division. So the way I understand the whole zero, so I beat Madusa, Akira beats me, but because I beat a, so then Akira beats me and Zero beats me. So, but because I beat Madusa, it's okay for Madusa to beat Zero or something like that. Again, it was politics. It was a lot of politics involved in egos of getting everybody on the same page and able to agree, because I think the storyline or whatever it was going forward of whatever they had planned was probably between the three of them. And I was just the person, again, thrown in there to help move the story along to get to the, you know, hey, who can we call to help us out on this? Oh, let's call Malia because, you know, she doesn't argue over anything. She'll do what we want. And I think that was one of the few times I did. I went out there and Chigusa actually really wanted to bump for me. And then she was told no. They said, you don't bump at all. And so I went out there and it was like literally a 3-second match. And after that, I called Paul Orendorff the next day at the office and I said, look, I'll put anybody you want over. I have no problem doing that. I said, but I will not do it that way ever again. I said, there's a right way and a wrong way. And I still have an independent career to think about. You're not signing me to a contract, and I still have a career on the indies that pays my bills, and I can't afford for you to squash me like that. And Paul understood that, and you know, he never had a problem. I never had any heat, as far as I know, over anything like that. You know, because again, like I said, I'm paid to win or lose. I'm not out there fighting for my life. I don't. And Luna's actually the one that said it. She's, I've made a very good living out of putting other people over. And I've held on to that because I have made a really good living and I've had a great career putting other people over. And I don't need to be like known as, oh, the world's greatest champion who never lost. I just want to be known as one of the best female wrestlers out there.
Absolutely. And you were, without a doubt about it, in my mind whatsoever. The locker room at WCW, I know like each time you go there, I just wanted to know, were there any male wrestlers that were supportive or guys in management that were supportive? Who in the company do you feel maybe made an effort or made friends with you, was friendly with you?
At that time, Terry was really the supportive one as far as that goes. But he was the one that got me booked there. And beyond that, I didn't really have any interaction with him until a few years later when Starla Saxton came about. But no, I mean, really at that time, I think I didn't really have a huge support system. I had Debbie Combs there. In fact, the night that Madusa was to put me over, it was kind of weird. And she was saying that she wasn't feeling good. She didn't know if she was going to be able to do the match. And about that time, Debbie walked into the trailer and Terry said, well, and Madusa goes, no, I can do the match. It'll be fine. So yeah, I don't know what, you know, again, that's just what happened. I can't say if she didn't want to have to put me over, or if she just didn't want me to be out there with Debbie because I worked with Debbie so much it would have flowed. I don't know. Like back then there was a lot of politics and positioning, and I think a lot of jealousy or insecurities.
Right, interesting stuff. I like it. I mean, it's not great, but I just like learning about the information.
Yeah, no, but you know, it's not, and that's the thing. Is like it wasn't great. Women have always been their own worst enemies. There's not a lot of spots for us. So if you're going to let your ego get in the way, then all you wind up doing is destroying whatever the women could have been built to be. Great point.
I want to bring up another legend here, Leilani Kai, March 19th, 97. It appears that you work with her on WCW Saturday Night in Dalton, Georgia. And they misspelled your name again on this one.
Right, again? Yep.
How was it to have her there and work with her in WCW at that point in time?
It was amazing. Like, because here's a girl a woman I respected, I trusted, and I knew that she would want me to look the best that I could look. So I wasn't worried about having to go out there and would I be hurt intentionally or unintentionally, or the girl saying, no, I can't do that, or I won't do that, or whatever. Leilani was always about making the other person look the best they could. And that's what she did that night for me. She really helped me out a lot.
That's great to hear. Yeah, as a fan, it's frustrating. You see someone like that pop in, and then you don't see her on TV for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, I just thought it was interesting seeing her pop in there and work with you. Another thing I wanted to ask about, the World Women's Cruiserweight Championship is created as a joint venture between WCW and Gaia Japan. First champion was crowned in a 4-woman tournament that began on March 31st, 97, concluded April 7th. The tournament final was only shown on WCW Main Event, and the results were never mentioned on WCW television again.
And the belt never came back.
Exactly.
Never came back.
The only question was, why doesn't my beloved Malia Hosaka win the championship here? I mean, geez.
Again, politics. That's the name of the game of everything, right? Politics. In fact, the first match that I did, I was out there and the referee was calling for us to go home. I was like, go home, go home, go home. So I shortened the match up a lot. And so then the next match I had, the girl tried to take some liberties with me to get even because they thought I was just screwing over the first girl. Because they weren't in the ring and because the first girl doesn't speak English, she wasn't hearing the guy say go home or understanding or whatever. And I was just following direction. And they never talked to me about it. It's just, I know that they were standing there screaming and I know what was being screamed backstage. So, and then literally the next time I went out, the girl was super stiff and everything. And I did have to worry about whether or not I was going to leave the ring uninjured.
Right, my gosh, it's unbelievable. Okay, I have to bring up Starla Saxton, who many may know as Molly Holly. You worked with us a certain amount of times there in 1998. How did you find working with her, and what would you say led to you kind of moving away from World Championship Wrestling?
I met Molly when she was Starla Saxton just starting out, and I want to say it was like the 5th match of her career. She didn't even have gear or boots. She was working for WCW because of me. I had actually run into Terry and he had asked me what I'd been doing, and I told him about Starla, and he said, why don't you bring her to Nitro on Monday? I'll give you a dark match and take a look at her. I'm like, cool. So then the next day I get a phone call and Terry says, hey, I decided, why don't you bring her to TV on Saturday because I should probably look at her before I put you guys on Nitro. And I'm like, okay, great. So I call her up and there's that. For a year and a half, I think she and I are very good friends. I kind of take her under my wing. I'm traveling with her. I'm getting her booked everywhere. I've got my name coming off of WCW, so I'm able to get her flown in because she's who I want to work with and get her more of a payday than what she should have been making at that point in her career. Like I said, I really thought we were good friends. I really considered her to be a personal best friend of mine in and out of the business. Terry Taylor quit his job at the end of January, and Starla told me off a couple days later, and a week later she was walking Savage to the ring. Now, the whole time that she and I were friends, or when I thought we were friends, she was living with Lanny Poffo and going to parties at Hogan's and Randy Savage's and all of this stuff, which I never begrudged her. I always thought, hey, it's great. If something comes about, then we're friends. We're going to get it together. It's all going to be good. Just didn't end up working out that way.
I see. Very interesting stuff. Okay, so you move away from WCW. Research again tells me you signed with the World Wrestling Federation in 1999. How did this opportunity come about? Was it because Terry moved over to WWF?
Again, Terry went to WWF, and he brought me in, and I did that whole fan deal.
Yeah.
And a month later, they signed me to a developmental, and they had the idea to put me with Poppy Chulo and call me Aphrodisia. But then they had also signed Lita. And well, the week I was supposed to start managing Poppy didn't make it in from Mexico due to customs or something. I don't remember what. And so the next week they called me and told me that they weren't going to need me because they decided that Lita had a better look for him. And so she became Lita and started managing him. And Terry had quit at that point also. So, yeah, it was kind of like, well, the guy who hired you and had the story for you is not here. So we're going to sit you home and we're going to go in this direction and we'll get back to you when we know something for you. So I more or less, I sat home for about a year. Towards the end of the year, I think it was around the beginning of January. I can't remember exactly. I was working for Harley and they called me and said, hey, we want you to go to Memphis and work. And I'm like, okay, well, you have to move there. And I'm like, I'm married and I have a life in Florida and I'm wrestling every week. What am I doing in Memphis? Well, we're going to have you working for Lawler and working on character stuff. I'm like, well, what character? And they're like, well, we don't have a character for you. I'm like, been doing Malia for 13 years. So kind of got that one down, guys. And they were asking me literally to take like a $1,500 a week pay cut to go live in Memphis and double my expenses because my husband wasn't going to move to Memphis and not make any extra money. And I just couldn't justify that. And I'm like, you know, if you've got something for me, I'm happy to go. But if I'm just going there to wrestle because you don't know what to do with me, I'm wrestling every week. I can send you tapes from Harley Race every week of what I'm doing. I'm in his school helping to train the guys. I'm helping do the tryouts. I'm, you know, doing his shows Thursday, Friday, Saturdays every week. And so they kind of dropped it and left me alone. And then they came up and said, well, we really don't have any other stories. And I said, what about the Dudley sister? I'm like, because at the time the divas were huge and everything was TNA. And I said, let me be the Dudley sister. Put me in the traditional long Catholic schoolgirl's outfit, not the sexy, cute one everybody thinks of, but like the traditional gaudy, ugly schoolgirl outfit. Put my hair in the braids, little to no makeup, make me look as hideous as you possibly can. And I'll go out there and I will just be, Bubba, I love him. Please don't hurt him, Bubba. And nope, didn't like it.
Oh,
I thought it'd been great.
I think that would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just, it just blows my mind because, you know, 1999 is kind of where I was talking about, you know, as you got signed and all that. At that point, they really did need more ladies on the roster because, you know, you had Ivory, you had Jacqueline.
Right.
They can't keep wrestling each other every week. It was very thin.
No, and I mean, and honestly, that was kind of I look at that like the pinnacle of my career where it could have gone higher, but instead I did what I was told and it kind of like tipped over the edge and started its decline down on the backside, which, you know, everything happens for a reason. But if there's one thing in my career I could have changed, it probably would have been that point, because I was sitting there going over everything and somebody said, well, they're not going to buy her as a fan because she's been a wrestler. And one of the agents says, yes, but she's never wrestled for us, so nobody's going to know who she is. And literally 5 minutes after I did the fan thing, it was all over the internet who I was. So there goes the Rocky Balboa storyline they had, because all of a sudden I can't be this fan turned wrestler. And I believe in my heart of hearts that if I would have stood up and said, hey, instead of me posing as a fan, you can bill me that way, but instead of backing down from Ivory, how about if I look at her and just say, you know what, if you can't keep your tits and ass out of the ring, or if you can't wrestle, just keep your tits and ass out of the ring. Because that was kind of my thing back then, was if you can't wrestle, keep your tits and ass out of the ring. So if I would have said that, and then she could have slapped me, and then we could have gone, then it wouldn't have mattered whether I was a wrestler or not. Now it was just somebody that got in the ring and mouthed off to her, and you could have built it either way. If nobody recognized me, I could have been the smart aleck fan who trained to be a wrestler, who came back, And if I was recognized, well, she got in the, you know, here's this pro indie girl who poses as a fan to get in the ring just to tell Ivory off or whatever. You know, there's so many different ways you could have taken that. But again, don't rock the boat, do what you're told. This is what you're hired to do. And that's what I did. So,
yeah, it is a shame because the story writes itself right there. I mean, it's not rocket science when you have a simple story of her picking someone out of the crowd, the person just so happens to have already been trained to wrestle and
Right.
surprises her by actually knowing what to do. And that makes Ivory look ignorant because she didn't recognize you because her head's up her ass as a character. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So, okay, moving forward away from the WWF, get away from that stuff because most of the time when I have people on the show, there's something that gets me angry. I wanted to talk about Brandy Alexander, working with her in Puerto Rico, 1999. In my research, it says in August. That was when you went there for the first time. Could be wrong, but let me know.
Yeah, no, that's wrong. That was the first time I went there with her.
Okay.
But no, I had been going down for several years for Carlos, doing his anniversary shows, working against Tigressa, mostly. I think that's really the only person. I think I might have worked Debbie Combs down there one time, but I can't remember for sure. But yeah, so then I went down later on. It was Brandy's first and only time down there, I believe. But I loved working with Brandy Alexander. She was my dance partner in the ring. We could easily go out there and do a 45-minute match and not even realize that we've been in the ring that long. She was a great heel to work against, and I was a good baby face, and we were just able to tell a story and hold the crowd, and it was amazing.
Right, awesome. Yeah, sorry for the mistake there. It happens almost every interview.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I trust me, I've read Wikipedia. There's a lot of mistakes on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I've tripped up many times because of Wikipedia. Okay, I want to talk about Harley, World League Wrestling in 2000, working with a lady by the name of Brandy Wine there at times, who I actually got to see perform at my first ever wrestling show here in Australia back when I was 14, I think. She came over for a tour, which was headlined by Kurt Hennig and Dennis Rodman.
Right, yeah.
But, I just thought, wow, that's really cool that I can bring her name up because she was there the first ever show I went to. But I wanted to know a little bit about her and I guess the health of women's wrestling outside of the WWF and all of that in that scene.
I think the health of women's wrestling outside of the WWF and even the WCW back then was good, because when I was with WWF, one of the road agents came to me and said, why do the girls want to wrestle? We have 11 men's matches. Nobody wants to see the girls wrestle. And I looked at him and said, well, I know you're wrong. He's like, well, how do you figure? I said, because I don't get flown all over the United States and all over the world because I'm TNA. I get flown to these places because I'm talented and I know how to do my job and I know how to wrestle. They can get anybody to get in there and roll around and do a stripper match. They cannot get women to get in there and tell a story and entertain the crowds and be family friendly and be wrestlers. And that's what the people want. So Brandy Wine, I actually was one of her first matches. She tagged with me when she first started, but I consider Brandy Wine a very good friend. We traveled together and we hung out together, both in the ring, out of the ring, in the business, out of the business. She's hilarious. But back then, because of everything I'd gone through between Molly Holly and WWF, there was a point where I became very bitter, and I told Brandy Wine she had no business being in the business, because she didn't. I kind of envy her in some aspects these days, because back then she never wanted to go to WWF. She never wanted to be a huge star. Her dream was to be a wrestler, and she was a wrestler. And it didn't matter where she worked or how well or how often or whatever. She just wanted to wrestle and have fun. And that saved her from a lot of politics, I think, and a lot of heartache, that if I could have been more like that, then I probably wouldn't have had that bitter period of my time, because I'd have just been wrestling. But yeah, at that time, it was just like, if all you want to do is wrestle on the indies, why are you even in the business? Like, if you have no ambition to go anywhere and do anything, why do you do it? She's like, because I love it, because I love being in the ring, and because I have fun, and because I was a fan of wrestling, and that was it,
Wow, that's really an interesting perspective to hear it from. It kind of makes me think of when I was in a rock band, and I wanted it to be this big thing. And when it didn't work out that way, I felt quite bitter about the whole thing. I should have just enjoyed what I was doing and not worry about that stuff.
Exactly. You can, you get so much more pleasure out of it then.
Definitely. There was another lady. I'm bringing up a lot of different ladies' names here because
You're fine.
for me, a lot of unsung heroes in pro wrestling that I'd like to get the name out there, of course. One lady that I was always a very big fan of was Daphne. And I see that you had the chance to work with her for Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling in 2001.
And
how did you find working with her, and did you get to know her very much?
Daphne was another one that I considered a very good friend outside of the business. I loved working with her. I remember that she was worried about working with me the first time we worked together, and we were in the ring, and I think she had me in a headlock takeover. I can't remember exactly. I'd have to go back, but anyways, I noticed her pants were coming down. So while I was selling, I reached down and I grabbed her pants and pulled them up for her. She's like, thanks. But kind of from that moment on, she's like, you're the best, and she started relaxing, and we would train together up at TCW. I would go to her Dusty's school, and she would meet me there, and I would help train her and teach her new moves and teach her some psychology. And because, she didn't come in as a wrestler, she came in as the Scream Queen with David Flair, and turning to the wrestling was just kind of where she went after that was ending, because that was her option, to get fired or become a wrestler, I guess. And I think they kind of sent the girls then back to the power plant. And then once she left there, she was just on the independent circuit and working for Dusty. And yeah, I mean, I think Daphne was a highly underrated wrestler and a highly underrated talent.
Definitely, and a highly underrated person as well, I believe.
Yes,
as far as I'm concerned.
Well,
I didn't get to know her, but
everybody that knows Daphne loves her. I mean, she just had this personality about her and this positive light about her. She just, I think anybody that crossed paths with her, I don't think she was underrated with any of them, because we all miss her dreadfully.
That's nice to hear. 18th of June 2003, I wanted to bring up because you work for TNA against Trinity, who I've also interviewed. Was this Terry asking you? I know Terry was there here and there, but
no, this was actually me asking Terry for a favor.
Okay.
There was another girl there who liked to lord it over Daphne and some other girls on the independent circuit, that she was with TNA. And she acted like it was some big thing, and that she was on their TV. And I was like, well, you're not getting paid. Anybody can be on TV if they're not getting paid. And so it was kind of another FU to that particular girl, where I called Terry up and said, hey, I'm in town. Can I do the show? And he's like, sure, come by. I'll see what we got. And I wound up working with Trinity. But I did it more or less just to prove to that other girl, if I really wanted to be there, I could be there. I don't want to be there working for free, which is why I'm not there. But if I wanted to, I could.
Good. I love hearing stuff like that. You proved your point. Just like that.
Yeah. Yeah, just like, my dad told me, I dare you couldn't do it. So, hi, Dad, here I am 30 years later.
We're getting to the tail end here of the interview, but a few more questions here that I have. The late 2000s, you work with a lot of young ladies early into their career. And just to name a few, Tennille Dashwood, Ember Moon, Serena Deeb, Leva Bates, AJ Lee, Jessica Havoc, Mia Yim, Santana Garrett, to name a few. And then there's plenty more, I'm sure. Who would you say out of all of this stood out to you the most as someone that you could see a lot in?
Leva Bates. I mean, I always thought Leva just had this charisma about her, and the way she liked to do the cosplay. And I wasn't sure how that cosplay could really fit into wrestling, because obviously you can't take like trademark things and put it on the show because it's trademarked. So at one point I thought, well, what if you just pretend to be like this weird, like Comic Con, Wrestling Con person, and you just started dressing up as all these different wrestlers, like whoever you were wrestling against, you just started dressing like them because you were their fan type thing. So I'm really glad that Leva's out there and she's got it. And Abaddon was actually another one. I worked with her at the beginning of her career. And when I worked with her, it was just such a pleasure to be in the ring. And I thought to myself, it's really a shame, because she didn't have that Barbie doll look. And as much as they talk about this women's revolution, it's still a bunch of Barbie dolls. They might be talented Barbie dolls now, but it's still a bunch of Barbie dolls out there. And because she didn't fit that mold, I was just like, it's, unless something comes up, I just don't know where she's going to go with this career. And it's a shame because she has this potential and she has this talent below her. So when she came out on AEW, like I said, I'm not a fan, so I don't really watch it. I had to message Matt Yaden of Rocky Mountain Pro and say, is that Abaddon? And he's like, yeah. So I was very proud for her too. And I'm very happy that she's has come as far as she has.
Excellent to hear. Excellent. Next question. Just a random question, really. What do you think of intergender wrestling?
Can't stand it. Absolutely hate it. I think it promotes violence on women. I think it teaches young children that it's okay to hit the opposite sex. When you start blurring those lines, like say you're a wrestling couple and you're in there against your significant other and you're allowing them to take blows and give you blows, you're blurring that line. And then all of a sudden you get out when you guys get into a heated argument and it becomes physical and you're shocked. When you blur those lines, you can't unblur them. And I think as athletes, we have a responsibility to go back to some old school values of, no, it's not okay to hit a girl. Can girls get in there and hold their own? Absolutely. Does the MMA allow it? No. Does boxing allow it? No. Why? Because when it comes down to it, men are physically stronger. So unless you're in something like a karate or a martial arts type thing where you're learning to use their body weight and their momentum and things against them, you really can't overpower a man unless you happen to be a 6'2" beast against a 5' nothing man. It's just, you're not going to do it. When you go in there and you're toe to toe, men are physically stronger, and that's just the bottom line of it. And by you putting it out there and saying that it's okay for this little boy's favorite guy to beat up this woman, he's going to go and do it in school and he doesn't see anything wrong with it. And then you have, and I know it's stereotypical, but yes, you have all these rednecks and hillbillies and even the closet businessmen that are abusers. Well, now you're teaching them that it's okay to do this. And I don't care that it's show. Kids don't understand that, and it just shouldn't be out there. I don't, and I saw that one of the girls posted that she doesn't, her shirt was like the world's best wrestler because she didn't want to be known as the world's best female wrestler. And I think that wrestling is a broad, especially professional wrestling, it's a broad enough scope of athletes that it's okay that you have a best male wrestler and to have a best female wrestler and to have a best midget wrestler, because there's room enough in this world for all of us, and we can all stand out and be unique in our own selves and within our own genders and respect one another's gender and choices. So no, I'm absolutely 100% totally against it. Now, the only exception to that would be the transgenders, and that's only with the exception of if when you go to the ring, you look like a female and nobody in that audience is going to know that you, whether you've had a surgery or not had a surgery, they 100% believe that you're a female, then wrestle as a female. If they're going to 100% believe you as a male, then wrestle as a male and wrestle men, because that's what you're associating with and that's what you're portraying and that's what you're being, then that's great. For the ones that want to do the non-binary and they want to wrestle both, I don't know. Can we make a division for them without them feeling like they're being segregated or discriminated against? I don't know in today's world. But I think there has to be a line somewhere in there where we go back to teaching our children across the world what it is to respect women and what it is to not only respect their intelligence, but to protect them and to teach women that it's not, I don't know, male masculinity, that they open a door for you, that is simply them being a gentleman and is them treating you with this type of respect.
I agree. I really do agree with pretty much everything you said there, because it was only a couple of months ago I saw a match between Jordan Grace and Matt Cardona on Impact, and she was in the corner and the right at the bottom on against a turnbuckle, and he's runs across from the other side of the ring and just kicks her full force in the face.
Right.
And to me, when I watched that, I'm like, I don't like seeing that. I know that they're having a great match here, and it was a great match, but I don't like seeing him kick her in the face.
No.
That's just me.
And not only do I not like seeing that, like, okay, yeah, if you get me really pissed off and you hit me and you don't knock me out, then yeah, I'm gonna get up and retaliate. I don't know how I'm gonna retaliate, but you've awakened the sleeping capital B that lives in me, and it's gonna come out. Am I gonna be able to hold my own? Probably not. Now, more than likely, if a normal man that's 6 foot average, 200, 300, 250, 280 hits me, I'm probably not getting up. And if you ran across the ring and kicked me, I probably wouldn't be getting up if it was for real, and so you take away the believability, which is part of wrestling's art. Like, it wasn't great back in the day because it was all this glitz and glamour. It was great because you suspended that belief, and for the time that the people were at the show, they got to believe in good and evil and cheer and boo, and they weren't thinking that this was Dwayne Johnson playing The Rock. They thought it was The Rock getting his butt kicked and I'm going to save him. And I'm, granted, he wasn't way back in the day, but I don't know anybody's real names from way back then. But it's like when you watch a movie, you don't want to sit there and go, oh, well, that's Mel Gibson, the same actor in every movie and the same character and the same expressions. You want to get invested in the character that he's playing in that movie. And I think that's the other part of, I don't agree with violence on women in the movies, but at least in the movies, the kids see this actor playing all these different characters, where in wrestling, they only see you playing this one character. So if this one person is beating up women, they're not differentiating it as being a show. This man is beating up a woman, and whoever, Joe Schmo is my idol, and it's okay for him to hit a girl. So now it's okay for me to hit a girl. And it doesn't matter that doesn't go along with Joe Schmo's values. All they see is Joe Schmo.
Wow, that is a point and a perspective I never looked at it before. That is so true. That is so true. I used to get confused. Why did someone get so mad at someone who did something on a live wrestling show? But when you watch Law and Order that night, there's something that even more horrible took place. Right. Now I'm kind of understanding it now that you put it that way.
Because like when you're watching Law and Order, you're invested in it because you're invested in the actual story and what's going on. Where in the wrestling, you get mad at them because you can yell and scream, but they're only that one person. It's like taking your favorite, I don't know, like an actor. I guess when actors get stereotyped and they can't ever break out of that role, it's because they played that one character so well, nobody can see him as anything else.
Very good point. Very good point. Okay, last question before I get to my final segment of the show. Okay. What else do you hope to accomplish in your time in professional wrestling?
I hope to pass on some of the art to the newer generation. I hope that I can teach some of the girls what the art of wrestling is, and even some of the guys, and have them take that art and put into this new school vibe that they've all got going. And maybe somewhere in the middle there, find a balance so that what is wrestling can come back into what it's supposed to be, and be great, but be great with this generation's twist, I guess.
Very nice. Well, I like to hear that. That's good. Okay, Malia Hosaka, get to our final segment here. I really appreciate your time. Early in the interview, it was very difficult for me. I was stumbling over my words. My heart was pounding. I finally calmed down now. So I have appreciated your time. The final segment is called 5 Second Frenzy. The rule is supposed to be that you have 5 seconds to answer each question, but it's okay if you take a little bit longer. Here we go. 5 Second Frenzy. The first question is, who is your favorite professional wrestler of all time?
Luna Vachon.
Excellent choice. If you could pick one person who's your favorite opponent over the years, who would you choose?
Debbie Combs.
Very nice. The last one about wrestling here. Favorite match personally for you that you performed in over your career?
Against Brandy Alexander for the WLW title in Springfield, Illinois.
Excellent, excellent. Moving away from wrestling now. Favorite book?
Ooh, that one's a hard one. I like a lot of historical trash novels. I don't really have a favorite.
Very good. That sounds like the type of stuff my mum likes, so that's cool. Favorite TV show?
Right now, Rookie.
Nice. Favorite film?
Ooh, that one's hard too. Serenity.
Nice. Favorite musical artist?
Toby Keith.
Very nice choice. Moving away from the arts now. Favorite food?
Sushi.
Nice. Very good choice. Favorite place to eat on the road?
Right now, El Tropico in Miami.
Sounds nice. We don't have a lot of fancy stuff here in Australia like that.
It's actually just Cuban. It's really good, though. It's good Cuban food.
Nice, nice. Third last one here. Supposed to be favorite alcoholic beverage. If you don't drink, favorite beverage in general?
Strawberry lemonade.
Nice. The second last one here, I guess it's kind of like the naughtiest one. Favorite male body part. You see a good-looking guy, you know, what would your eyes go to first?
Abs.
Abs. Very nice choice.
But everything else.
Excellent, of course. And the final one here, I don't believe you said one swear word, one curse word, but it's supposed to be your favorite curse word.
Fuck. Every other word usually.
Well, if this were Family Feud, that would be the number one answer for the segment. Well, Malia Hosaka, I want to thank you so much for your time. It really meant a lot to me to have the chance to talk to you. I learned something through this interview, which means, because I'm such a nerd, if I learn something, that means heaps of people are going to learn something from this interview. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. And I just hope you are so proud of everything that you accomplished in professional wrestling. You've helped a lot of people, and all the way over here in the most isolated city in the world, Perth, Western Australia, you have your number one Australian fan.
Well, see, I'm still trying to wrestle in Australia. So some of the Australian bookers need to book me.
Well, I'll do my best, and I'll let them all know that Malia Hosaka has come down under.
Right, exactly. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. And thank you all out there for watching the Insider's Edge podcast here on the WZWA Network. I'm Karlifornia Haguesly. This is my new friend, Malia Hosaka, and we will see you down the road. Thank you.